Good afternoon. Welcome to the News Roundup for Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. I'm your host, Bill Thomas. It is the Hump Day Wednesday edition of the program. We have some intriguing stories to share with you today, and here's what's happening right now on the big Roundup. We begin with this. President Trump accusing a trio of brutal dictators of conspiring against the U.S. Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin, delivers an alarming threat concerning the possible end of his war with Ukraine and the U.S. military taking deadly action against drug-running gang members off the coast of Venezuela. Also, Ford issuing another massive recall, this time an issue with the brakes, and certain individuals may soon have to show their IDs in order to buy a variety of high-octane energy drinks. Yeah, we'll tell you all about the government ban that's got a whole bunch of youngsters right now seeing red. All this and more coming up right now on the Big Roundup. We have a great deal to get to today, and we begin with President Trump alleging that the leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea, they're all conspiring with each other in order to counter the goals and the efforts of the USA. The president leveling the accusation at the three dictators as they demonstrated a rare display of provocative unity standing side by side during the largest military parade in China's history, and that was held earlier today in Beijing to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. Now, in a social media post, President Trump congratulating Chinese President Xi Jinping on the occasion while extending his best wishes to the wonderful people of China. He then asks Xi to pass along his warmest regards to his nearby comrades, Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, as the three of them took advantage of the event to conspire against the USA. The president then goes on to wonder whether or not Xi will give any credit to the U.S. for the great sacrifice which was made by our nation's brave heroes in order to free China from the grip of a foreign invader during the Second World War. China's massive Victory Day parade was a significant display of the communist country's rapidly growing military strength, and it featured a number of state-of-the-art weapons. Those armaments include a variety of nuclear-capable modern missiles, also a number of strategic defense systems, and several different types of innovative attack drones. In the meantime, President Trump and his administration continue to negotiate the terms of our nation's trade deal with China. And earlier this month, the president signed an executive order which delays imposing severe tariffs on China for yet another 90 days. Keep pushing it back. Final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Now, yesterday on this program, we clearly pointed out that, in my estimation, a new world order rapidly beginning to develop, and proud card-carrying members of that difficult-to-enter fraternity, they include a group of violent dictators whom you'd never want to go on a road trip with. That would not be a delight. In case you missed it, those palling around with Xi Jinping at today's military parade in China included warmonger Vladimir Putin, the esteemed gentleman from North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and they say that Iran's head honcho, President Masoud Pezeshkian, was also nestled comfortably in the bleachers up there in the cheap seats looking down. A more wicked group of miscreants gathered in one place at the same time would be impossible to fathom. Now, perhaps President Trump, clearly in agreement with your News Roundup host, that be me, is also seeing what I'm seeing, that new world order. His comment regarding China, Russia, and North Korea conspiring against the U.S., that should not fall on deaf ears. And when those rogue nations conspire against us, think about it. They're conspiring as well against all of our allies, and not just in Europe, but all over the planet. Now, a reminder to all distinguished members of that new world order and those who are in support of it. The U.S., we will not be threatened. We'll never back down, and we will always be there for our allies. With that, we bring in producer Davey from over yonder, the home base in Washington, D.C. Davey, I saw bits and pieces of that parade. I've seen the photos. It did not look pleasant. What are you thinking?
Well, it's pretty much what you expect from a Chinese military parade.
Yeah.
A lot of peacocking, as they call it, and, it remains to be seen how much substance is there.
Yeah, and I would have said showboating, but I think we're pretty much on the same page. Yeah. All right, thoughts or comments on our big top story today, highly encouraged. We're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. With that, we go to the email bag. Davey, I can see on the email list right in front of me, we're getting tons of notes on this one. So let's go to the bag, and who do we hear from first?
Okay, Bill, today, batting leadoff is Gary from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Hi, Gary. Welcome to the program.
And he says that President Trump is correct when he says that China, Russia, and North Korea are all conspiring to destroy our country, And you can toss Iran into the mix as well. The question is, what is he going to do about it?
Yeah. Well, not just destroy our country. The president was right, conspiring against the U.S. But as I said, when you conspire against the U.S., you're conspiring against the West. You're conspiring against all of our allies. And this is, in my estimation, a new world order. That's what I said. The president said it in a different way, but I think we're all on the same page. What's he going to do about it? Stay strong. Stand proud. Listen, we have an incredible military. In my estimation, to my understanding, the most advanced military in the history of the world. So China can make cozy with North Korea and Iran and Russia and whomever else. I think there are a total of 80 global leaders at that big parade, but nothing beats the U.S. Nothing has ever beaten the U.S., and nothing will in the future beat the U.S. Keep standing proud, standing strong, and we're going to do just fine. Thank you very much for checking in, and who's up next?
Okay, Bill, we have one here from Iris, who's writing to us today from Monterey Park, California.
Oh, I know Monterey Park very well. That's maybe 10, 15 minutes just outside of downtown L.A. Iris, great to have you with us, and what are you thinking?
Well, Iris says China is our enemy. They're led by a communist regime, and they're doing everything in their power to bring us down. Yeah. Time to dump them forever and go our own way.
Well, we can't dump them forever. That would make us an isolationist. We have incredible trade deals with China. As you know, the tariffs are kind of a sticking point. The president just gave them a 90-day little breathing period there. So the trade deals will be strong. The tariffs, they'll be brought down to reasonable levels in time. But we can't just blow China off, just like China can't blow us off. We need to stay in business with one another. They have many things that we need. They have a number of things that they need. So it's good to stay in business with China. But the fact that China is cozying up with North Korea, Iran, Russia, and all the rest, that's just terrible. And back to that parade, that was a massive military parade. Davey, you and I were just talking about that. The tanks, the missiles, thousands of soldiers, and all the rest. And it kind of looks like President Xi, he's trying a bit too hard to prove that he's a big boy, a big player. And look, as a general rule in life, the best boxer, he doesn't run around the town, run around the gym, bragging about what a great fighter he is. That would be overcompensating, and that kind of feels like what Xi Jinping is doing right now in China. We're going to move along now and stick with a bit of a related subject and turn our attention to Russian President Vladimir Putin and some of his recent eyebrow-raising comments concerning President Trump's ongoing efforts to bring an end to Russia's devastating war against Ukraine. The Russian leader now saying that if common sense prevails, there's a good chance the president will finally be able to negotiate an end to the war. Says that thanks to President Trump and his administration's sincere desire to find a mutually beneficial solution to the conflict, there's finally a legitimate light at the end of the tunnel, which could actually result in the end to the fighting once and for all. However, Putin goes on to warn that if all else fails, he's ready, willing, and able to use whatever military force is necessary to bring the war to a close if that's the only way he can get the job done to his complete satisfaction. Additionally, the Russian leader now saying that he's ready to meet face-to-face with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but only if his counterpart is willing to pay a visit to Moscow for the summit. Absolutely not. You got to find neutral ground. In the meantime, Putin says that he questions whether or not such a meeting with Zelensky is even worthwhile, claiming that the Ukrainian president is an illegitimate leader of his country because he hasn't held any recent elections. Now, the Russian leader also doubling down on his long-standing demands that Ukraine give up their ambitions to join NATO, as well as cede a large chunk of eastern Ukraine to Moscow. Furthermore, Russia says that Putin is now counting on President Trump to take up his offer, which was made following their recent summit in Alaska, and accept his invitation to pay a visit to Moscow. Kind of dicey. Don't know where I stand on that one just yet. For his part, Trump has been doing all he can to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. However, ever since his recent meeting with Putin, Russia's attacks against Ukraine, they've been escalating. And Ukrainian officials now urging the president to punish Moscow by imposing a series of extremely severe sanctions. We'll wait and see how that part pans out. Final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. This is nothing other than more of the same. Putin has no designs on ending this war, and at this point, it feels like he's merely toying with Ukraine. Zelensky has made many attempts to meet with Putin and hold meaningful discussions, which would, in theory, lead to a ceasefire and subsequently an end to this war, but Putin hasn't budged. The Trump administration has done all it can to bring all sides to the table, but Putin simply won't cooperate. And his current rhetoric claiming that he will end his war with Ukraine by force is something which everyone worldwide we should all be very deeply concerned about. Now, for close to 4 years, Putin has tried to take Ukraine by force, and he's made remarkable headway. But perhaps now he's making reference to a different kind of force. Nobody really knows. For now, Moscow remains heavy on demands, but they make no mention of concessions. They say they're ready for peace talks, but their actions suggest otherwise. And today, in my estimation, Vladimir Putin is on the global stage, from my perspective, public enemy number one. Hey, drop us a note now with your thoughts or comments, any questions, whatever you got. And we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. I think he's really ratcheting up the rhetoric, Davey. And to the email bag, what are folks thinking about this one?
Okay, Bill, let's start off with Martin, who's writing to us from Brighton Beach, New York.
I know Brighton Beach well. Martin, appreciate you checking in. What are you thinking?
Martin says, Putin is being very reasonable here. He's willing to talk peace and even meet with Zelensky in Moscow. What more do you want?
Well, he's really not talking peace. He's not doing anything to advance the peace process. He's saying that just so we can say he said that. To have peace talks but hold them in Moscow, this is a country that invaded Ukraine. So to bring the Ukrainian leader into Moscow, wouldn't you imagine that Vladimir Zelensky would feel a little bit vulnerable? Absolutely not. You've got to find neutral territory. Very easy for Zelensky, very complicated for Vladimir Putin because there are warrants out for his arrest. He's a bad man on the global stage. A lot of folks would like to take him into custody. So, of course, if there are going to be peace talks, he wants every possible advantage, wants to have it on his own home turf. Highly recommend against that. Absolutely not. And David, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's a different view from Zelda, who's writing to us today from St. Louis, Missouri.
Lovely name, Zelda. What are you thinking?
Zelda says, Putin is a butcher who's talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Yeah.
We should hit him even harder with sanctions, and if they don't work, we should give Ukraine our best weapons and let them do whatever they please.
Well, no sense in giving Ukraine our best weapons. We did that during the Biden administration to the tune of approximately $350 billion and maybe more. At the beginning of President Trump's second administration, he's also provided additional arms, additional money, additional aid. But at one point, we can't be the global piggy bank. So we are now selling those arms to our European allies who are then bringing those weapons to Ukraine to their defense. So we're still supporting them, but we can't keep footing the bill. And in time, mark my words, Vladimir Putin, he will be justice will catch up to him. Look, like Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and many others before them, in time, Vladimir Putin, he's going to be stopped. He'll be brought to justice and held accountable for his murderous action. Change things up now just a bit and turn to our government's trailblazing efforts to combat the flood of illegal narcotics flowing into our country by taking the fight against drug-running criminal gangs to the high seas. It is a big deal, very dramatic. The Trump administration now saying that our nation's military has just carried out a deadly preemptive strike against a drug-filled boat which left the shores of Venezuela and which was allegedly carrying nearly a dozen members of the violent Tren de Aragua criminal gang. President Trump says that 11 people were killed in that strike, that it took place in international waters well off the coast of Venezuela, and that the victims were all in the process of ferrying illegal drugs here to our nation. Goes on to say that no members of the U.S. military were harmed in the assault, and that moving forward, any individual who is involved with bringing illegal drugs into our country should now be on high alert. Absolutely. The president also posting a black and white video of the attack, which apparently shows a speedboat racing through the Caribbean just before exploding in a gigantic fireball. The strike marks a significant escalation in the Trump administration's attempt to stem the flow of illegal drugs into our country by taking the fight directly to the source of the problem, which happens to be the shores of Latin America itself. Absolutely. In case you're not aware, President Trump blames the notorious Tren de Aragua criminal gang, which got its start in a Venezuelan prison, for a great deal of our nation's drug problems. And he claims that these gangsters now acting under the direct control of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Now, as a result, our nation is deploying a number of naval warships in the waters off the coast of Venezuela as we ramp up our efforts to take on violent cartels throughout Latin America. Now, for his part, Maduro claims that our nation is simply using the military as a cover and that our real goal is to kick him out of office and gain control of his country's vast oil and gas reserves. Not panning out that way, but not a bad idea. We could use that energy. Venezuelan officials also saying the video which shows the attack that was actually created entirely by AI. I don't buy it. A final thought, this is the News Roundup Lowdown. Desperate times, they call for desperate measures and doing all they can to protect the U.S. The Trump administration is doing more than just talking. They're taking decisive, proactive measures to stop other countries from poisoning our nation with their deadly drugs. So, the vessel which we hit was reportedly being piloted by the Trinidad gang. And to be clear, this crew is more than just a street gang. These are bad cats. They're a highly structured terrorist organization which has destroyed American families with brutal violence, engaged in human trafficking, and spread deadly drugs throughout our communities. Now, if there's any doubt in your mind regarding why this ship was targeted, easy. It was singled out in an effort to keep deadly drugs off of our streets, away from our neighborhood schools, churches, and businesses. And this action was taken to save American lives. The overall scheme of things, this was nothing more than a gentle message. But hopefully, drug-running gangs will think long and hard before they make that northern trek out of Venezuela and into the U.S. to pollute our country with their deadly poisons. With that, we encourage you to share your thoughts and comments with us regarding the Trump administration hitting a drug-running boat in international waters. Curious as to your thoughts, and we're at newsroundupwithbill@gmail.com. Dave, you have been following this one very closely, very carefully. Another success by the Trump administration, and what are our friends saying?
Yeah, Bill, this is a very interesting story, and here's Kathleen in Laughlin, Nevada.
If it's okay, I'm just going to say, hiya, Kate. Welcome from Laughlin.
Okay, she says, bravo to Trump for having the courage to use everything at his disposal to battle the vicious drug dealers which are ruining our country and killing our children. More, please, and thank you, Mr. President, for saving America.
Yeah, and that's just a start. Thank you very much, Kate, for checking in. You're absolutely spot on. Thank you very much for that comment. This is just the very beginning. If we can start there and then go all around the world and stop everybody from bringing those drugs into the U.S. We start with Venezuela. We're already dealing very carefully with Canada and Mexico right here in North America. A number of other countries as well are problematic for the drug epidemic in this country. We've got to get it under control. And I haven't come across anybody who has done as much to combat drugs as the Trump administration. And this is just 6 or 7 months into the term. More is yet to come. And Davey, who's up next?
Okay, Bill, here's Kurt writing to us from Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, by the way, before you get to Kurt, don't mean to downplay the significant role that First Lady Nancy Reagan played in the fight against drugs. But the big campaign, David, you recall the campaign, right?
Just say no, Bill?
Just say no. It's terrific and it's a good start, but it's just words. The president has gone from just words to action, significant action at that, and this is a positive step forward. Absolutely. Okay, and who's our next comment from?
Okay, it's Kurt from Boulder, Colorado.
Hiya, Kurt.
And Kurt says, sorry, but it's against international law to arbitrarily target any old boat, blow it out of the water, and execute people just because you claim it was full of drug-running gang members. Where's the proof, and why aren't those victims entitled to a fair trial?
Proof, very interesting, but I can't speak to what the Trump administration did with regard to intel. I'm sure they did a great deal of research and found out what was happening in Venezuela, what was on that boat. I can't speak to the intelligence they gathered prior to that strike. I do know enough to know about the Trump administration to know they wouldn't just start bombing any particular ship off the coast of Venezuela in international waters. I trust the administration. I trust the intel they put together, which led to that strike, and I think this was a very effective strike. By now, I think we've all seen the video. We saw the black and white photo at least, and that's some pretty good proof, some evidence there. In time, I think more evidence as it becomes necessary will be distributed to the public. There's what's called the Freedom of Information Act, so I'm sure across the media, across the country, certain news organizations are going to reach out to the federal government and find out what the intel was, and I think we'll all be pleased with the results of any investigation. All right, by the way, the president of Venezuela, David, you're familiar with this guy, Mr. Maduro, Nicolas Maduro, yes?
Yeah, we've all heard a lot about him, Bill.
Yeah, for those who haven't, this is a bad guy. These gangs, they may have been under his thumb. Maybe they weren't. Nobody really knows. But the U.S. Department of State, just so we all know, and we've talked about this on the program before, right now they're offering $50 million for information leading to the arrest and or the conviction of Maduro. So, Davey, we do this during the week, you and I, but maybe during the weekend we could get together and perhaps we could come up with a plan to find out where this guy is at, because $50 million bucks. Boy, if you and I split that right down the middle, 80% for me, 20% for you, we could do quite well, yes?
If you do the work, I'll take the 20%.
Now, some additional headlines we are keeping a close watch on. NATO member Turkey, they're now putting the finishing touches on a cutting-edge new fighter jet, which they're aiming to sell to a number of developing countries as a cheaper alternative to the U.S.-made F-35 stealth fighter, except no invitations. Also, in California, a new wave of COVID currently forcing state officials to urge the public to take greater precautions, while on the other side of the country, Florida now preparing to put a complete halt to all of their state's current vaccine mandates, including those which apply to children who attend school in the Sunshine State. Now we pivot to the world of business and a few pressing headlines which are currently making waves nationwide. Check them out. Right now, Amazon's CEO in the process of drastically reshaping his company's declining productivity by restoring both urgency and discipline to his entire workforce, saying that the best leaders are those who get the most done with the least amount of resources. Ford now recalling more than 500,000 of their Lincoln and Edge model SUVs due to a potentially dangerous issue concerning leaky brake fluid. You gotta have good brakes, man. And the U.S. Treasury Department now releasing their official list of all the jobs which will be covered by the no tax on tips clause of the president's massive tax cuts and spending package. The long list includes gigs related to food and hotel service, taxi drivers, tour guides, hairdressers, and more. Nowhere in that list is the tax on tips for podcasters, Davey. What happened to podcasters? Are we excluded somehow?
No, actually, I think if somebody ever does tip us, we'll probably get a tax break on that too, Bill.
Outstanding. It's a beautiful day. And now time for us to charge over to the part of the program we call the lighter side of news, where we gaze into our crystal ball and take a closer look at a few enchanting stories which are guaranteed to brighten up your day. Not a guarantee we stand behind, but it's a guarantee. We'll kick things off today with a bold move which is being made by a fast food giant that claims to be finger-licking good, no matter what type of bizarre new item is popping up on their menu. What could this possibly be? Texas-based KFC now introducing their very own variety of flavored jelly beans, all of which are designed to taste just like their world-famous fried chicken, sweet corn, and even brown gravy. For reals? The company swears that their announcement definitely not a joke. Yeah, for reals. And they say that the 3 different flavors will all be available in the same bag, and that if all goes according to plan, you'll be able to try them out for yourself when they hit the market just in time for next year's Easter holiday. You know, Davey, far too often in life, things can be complicated, expensive, unattainable, and or mildly difficult to understand. But then KFC comes along, KFC to the rescue, and they make life worth living again. This is the greatest food stuff to hit the planet since that 3-course dinner chewing gum from the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie in 1970-something or other. It was a chunk of gum invented by Willy Wonka, feeds a person almost like they're really eating dinner, starting with tomato soup, roast beef, and a baked potato before concluding with blueberry pie and ice cream. If you saw the movie, those are pretty bad side effects. This one, no side effects. Sounds mildly gooder on account of its jelly beans that taste like KFC vittles. Perfect. For the first time, Davey, in the history of the world, life is indeed perfect, making life perfect again. Sounds pretty appetizing, but what do you do when you're finished eating the jelly beans, the KFC beans? You got to wash it down with something, Davey? You got some kind of beverage for us, maybe?
Well, Bill, I guess our next story would apply unless you're of a certain age.
All right, we'll take a big gulp now and turn to a developing story concerning a government effort to prohibit the sale of certain energy drinks to a large segment of their population. No, it's not here, it's over there. Authorities in England now planning to completely ban the sale of high-powered energy drinks, things like Red Bull and Monster, to anyone under the age of 16. That's pretty much me, Davey. They say they're making the move in order to protect the health of their nation's children, and the action will basically make it illegal for their their country's retailers to sell any energy drink with a high caffeine content to youngsters. And when I say youngsters, I mean folks like engineer Jamie. Health officials claim that right now, nearly 100,000 English children consume at least one energy drink every day, leading to anxiety, obesity, lack of sleep, and even poor results in school. Sure, blame it on the energy drink. Fortunately, those hardworking students will still be able to get their hands on a number of other drinks that have lower caffeine levels, things like Coke and Pepsi, coffee, and their traditional cup of tea. It's England, after all. So, Dave, if I understand this one correctly, in England, anybody at any age, 16 or under as well, can walk into a Starbucks, grab a jumbo-sized coffee with gobs and gobs of caffeine, tons of sugar, whipped cream, maybe a splash or two of chocolate or caramel, a couple of espresso shots, and that's okay, right?
That's correct, Bill.
However, if you're under 16, you want a Red Bull, you're going to get carded. Sounds kind of peculiar. Hey, do what you want, but you're not fixing anything, and you're actually making things worse. Now, in England, if a teenager wants a Red Bull, they'll have to find a black market dealer in the back of the school campus and pay an extra $9 for a 12-ounce shot. But for those who want or need that jolt, yeah, they'll find out real quick where to find it. Black market Red Bulls. It's amazing. And now, Davey, sweeten things up for us just a bit. Where do we go from here?
How about a candy-coated story that melts in your mouth and not in your hands, Bill?
You had me at candy. Finally today, another legendary candy company taking a bold step, introducing some rather outlandish new taste sensations. M&M's now announcing a trio of wild new flavors, including peanut butter cinnamon roll, lemon meringue pie M&M's, Davey?
That's correct. Doesn't it sound delicious?
And even one called cherry chocolate cupcake. You can buy cherry chocolate cupcake M&M's.
I guess the connoisseurs of M&M's are doing it again. What can I say?
How come when I call you cupcake, I get a message from HR, but now I can actually order cherry chocolate cupcake candies? It's weird, Davey.
Yeah, Bill. Well, you'll have to ask HR about that.
All right. The move comes as the parent company of the world-famous melt in your mouth, not in your hands candy is making a desperate bid to appeal to your taste buds by tweaking a whole bunch of their most popular snacks. In case you're wondering, some of their other ambitious innovations include the introduction of chili-flavored Skittles. You got to be kidding. A whole bunch of sour-tasting Starburst fruit chews, and even something called Snickers Extreme, which is jam-packed with enough peanuts to feed an elephant. I thought it already had a fistful of peanuts in every bar. Some things in life supposed to be complicated. Trigonometry, cardiovascular, pediatric surgery, and fitted bed sheets. You ever try using those fitted bed sheets, Davey, with the elastics on all four corners and you can't make it fit on the bed? You ever get stuck doing that?
Oh, yeah. It's very aggravating when they slip off a corner, Bill.
Very complicated. Other things in life are supposed to be easy, like candy. And this is getting all too complicated. Just too many M&M flavors. Now, I did some research, Producer Davey. I did some investigative journalism on this story. I dug a bit deeper, uncovered some additional facts. Turns out there are actually a total of 66 varieties of M&Ms. And life was better when it was just plain and peanut. Also, we don't need a new version of Skittles. I think you said chili Skittles, and leave Snickers alone. Just get back to basics. That is a quick look at the lighter side of news, and share your thoughts regarding new candy concoctions. ID required to buy a Red Bull or KFJB, Kentucky Fried Jelly Beans. You'll catch us at newsroundup.with bill@gmail.com. Davey, the Kentucky Fried Chili Beans, that one's got me. And what are folks saying?
Yeah, well, there are people who are weighing in on that as well.
Very good.
So we'll start with Chip in Villanova, Pennsylvania.
Bring it on, Chip.
And he says, I can barely stand the taste of the Colonel's greasy chicken, much less the rest of that nauseating stuff. Those jelly beads are already turning my stomach.
You know, there are certain things in life you don't beat up on. You don't beat up on small kittens. They're adorable. You don't beat up on small babies and say they don't look right or they don't smell right or they cry too much. They're babies. They're gorgeous. And you don't beat up on KFC. You're absolutely wrong and you're out of line. KFC jelly beans are going to be the next perfect food to take over the planet. Appreciate you checking in, but you got that one all wrong. Davey, what's next?
Okay, Bill, here's one from Contrary Mary from the Maryland Eastern Shore.
That's a mouthful to take in, but Mary, bring it on. What do you got?
And she's writing about the energy drinks, Bill.
Oh, sure.
And she says we should do the same thing here in our country when it comes to banning those harmful energy drinks. They're as bad as cigarettes, and we're only beginning to see their adverse health effects on our population.
Well, I don't know that the Red Bull, the monster drink, is going to cause lung cancer or other respiratory illnesses or other health complications. But yeah, I suppose they're not overly healthy. To my understanding, Davey, they don't have a lot of sugar. They're using some artificial sweeteners, but they've got tons and tons and gobs of caffeine. Is that the big deal?
Well, there's caffeine, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff in those energy drinks, Bill. And I don't think anybody knows exactly what those side effects are going to be.
Yeah, and I feel strongly as well about soda pop. You got to do it in moderation. But, if you've had a couple of Cokes or a couple of 7-Ups or a couple of soft drinks, whatever it is, it's kind of addicting. The more you drink, the more you want, the more you need, and it's kind of a vicious cycle. So I kind of see the tie-in with cigarettes. Cigarettes are addicting. I think for some people, alcohol is addicting. I think the soda pop, the sugar, the caffeine, the additives, the preservatives, the colorings, yeah, it is kind of addicting. It all sounds like a real bad idea. All right, time for one more, and we got to wrap it up.
Okay, Bill, here's one from Max in Macon, Georgia.
What you got for us, Max?
He says, that's why our country is so great. We have the freedom to eat and drink whatever we want. Yeah. And now we have RFK Jr. to keep us all healthy. Yeah. Make America healthy again.
Well, making America healthy again might start by putting some limitations, some regulations on some of those energy drinks. I've tried one once several years ago, and the jolt was just overwhelming. A cup of coffee from Starbucks, that's a big enough jolt as it is. And a lot of folks, when they go to Starbucks, they add extra this and extra that, an extra shot and more junk. It's kind of like a hot fudge sundae in a coffee cup. It's just too much, all the extra sugars and the caffeine. And same thing with those energy drinks. I know the kids are addicted to it, and I'm sure some adults are addicted to it as well. Come 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there's still more work to get done. You need that extra jolt. But yeah, it sounds like a bit of a health concern. Perhaps England got it right this time. If you're going to get one of these energy drinks and you're under 16, you're going to get carded and then turned away. And with that, time for us now to call it a wrap on the Hump Day Wednesday edition of the Big News Roundup. And before we go, as we do each and every day here on the program, we like to share with you a very notable quote. And today's impactful words come to us today from King George VI, who said, "The highest of distinctions is service to others." George VI, he was the king of the United Kingdom, 1936 to 1952, and on this date in 1939, he was the one who delivered a famous radio speech to his entire nation, announcing the beginning of World War II. And you might be familiar with his story, which was told in the Academy Award-winning 2010 movie, The King's Speech, the King of England. Now, is he the one responsible, Davey, for saying you can't buy the energy drink in England if you're under 16? Same king?
No, I think this is a different king who's in charge now, Bill.
Different one altogether. Who knew? And now it is time for us to hit the road. But before we go, just a friendly reminder, tonight's Powerball jackpot worth nearly $1.4 billion. And now it is time for us to skedaddle on out of here. But before we call it a day, don't forget the News Roundup motto. Ask not what your podcast can do for you, but what you can do for your podcast. What can you do? A number of things you can do. For example, you can subscribe to our program so you never miss even a single episode. Follow us on your favorite social media platform and show us some love. For crying out loud, score us one of those highly sought-after 5-star reviews. We feed on a 5-star review. Better yet, you can head over to our hot rockin' flame throwing YouTube channel. Just look for News Roundup with Bill Thomas. That's me. Give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and please don't forget to click on that little bell that pops up to receive notifications and make sure you never miss a single episode. By the way, the News Roundup, we are available on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. I checked, iHeart as well, and wherever you find your podcasts. We are everywhere. And for now, it looks like our time, it's officially up, so have an awesome day today. Please do all you can to stay safe. And a reminder, let's all continue to watch out for one another. With that, my dear friend, Engineer Jamie, let's dim these lights. Let's gently fade to black, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow afternoon.